Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have a couple of questions. So I believe in the fiscal notes I saw, it says it's assumed that up to 5% of the proceeds from the trust will be expended on administrative costs. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is there a cap?
I believe the cap is up to 5%.
So no more than 5% of the cost could be spent on administration?
Correct.
Okay. With regard to possible misuse of the fund, I'm looking at, I think, lines 324 to 328. What's the procedure if it's discovered someone has claimed inappropriately?
I think the procedure itself still has to be determined by the Department of Labor, but the bill calls that anybody who's found to be an abuse of the program would be suspended from accessing the program for 1 year.
And is the money reclaimed?
There is a provision that does allow for recapturing those funds, yes.
Do we know, obviously this is still to be written, looking at the language, can waive the amount of any such payments where the recovery would be against equity and good conscience, so it would be a very subjective decision?
Correct, not unlike some other powers that we give the Department of Revenue Services to waive penalties, but yes, correct.
Okay. And I'm, again, looking at some of the fiscal implications. Is there a reason why it was decided to collect the revenue for only 1 year? Massachusetts is instituting their program as of July 1st, 2019, but are actually collecting funds for 2 years.
Yeah, I'm not informed as to why 1 year was decided upon versus 2, so I don't know.
Yeah, I just find that somewhat surprising in that the Massachusetts benefit is not 100%. It's 80% if you make less than 50% of the average weekly earnings. If you make more than 50% of the average weekly earnings, you only get a 50% benefit. And that makes me very concerned about the need to immediately come back for additional funds. And it says there'll be it's anticipated we'll be getting at least $4 million a week. Is that correct? Have I read this?
I mean, well, the way the fiscal note reads, it reads that they anticipate collecting $400 million over the year. If you break that down by some other number, it ends up being $33 million a month. I think the $4 million provision is that at least $4 million need to be collected on I think it's a monthly basis, not a weekly basis.
Okay, and we did have the discussion about if the IRS determines this is subject to income tax, it would then be subject to Connecticut state tax. Did I understand that correctly?
Correct.
Okay. And again, I know this is not the committee that drafted the bill. Is there a reason that that 100% level was chosen? Again, looking at our neighboring states, Rhode Island's only 60% in terms of wage replacement. California's between 60 and 70%, as I said, to outline the Massachusetts, and they all have caps. I think Massachusetts, the maximum you can withdraw is $850 a week.
I believe the proponents of the bill believe that was the best benefit to offer for our state.
Okay, thank you. And and again, is there? It's difficult because I know you didn't draft this bill. In both California and Massachusetts, if employers have comparable plans, they can be exempt from this. Again, there's no provision for this in this bill, I understand.
That's correct.
It's the state benefit or nothing.
That's correct.
All right. And I just have a few comments to make. I fully accept that things happen in our lives and we may want to take time off and need to take time off. And there may be a need for replacing those funds that one had relied on. But I'm very concerned about a number of issues with this. One, as we've discussed before, as Representative Mesker said, that the fiscal sustainability of this. I think we're in danger of making promises that we can't keep without dramatically increasing the amount of money we're taking from people's paychecks. And again, that may be something that people say, well, I don't care. It's not going to matter to me. But I think we need to have that conversation. I know that a few years ago, this legislature passed a retirement program. Again, it's not mandatory, but do residents of this state know that they may see, in addition to this 0.5%, 3% of their salary taken away to give them a retirement account? Again, a worthy end, but let's let people know what is happening. I'm concerned about the low number of employees. Wearing my other hat, I have 3 full-time employees, including me, and a number of part-time employees. It would be difficult for me to replace them. And that's why I, as an employer, try to be very generous in terms of allowing them to work at home when they can, continuing to fund them. I think that's a decision that's best left to the employer in many cases. I'm concerned about the effect this will have on some of our employers who have very skilled labor. If you're an Electric Boat or a Pratt & Whitney or Sikorsky, where do you find a skilled machinist with a federal security clearance for 12 weeks? The additional costs of overtime are going to be very great. I want us to be able to come up with a plan that's going to protect people who face that difficult situation. But I'm not convinced this is the way. I think we need to work better to come up with something that will take into account both the needs of our residents, but the needs of our employers. Massachusetts has put their plan in. Massachusetts has regained 300% of the jobs they've lost in the recession. So again, I am going to be a no on this today, but I want to come up with something that's employers and employees and the state can create to protect people who face something unfortunate. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.